actually go ahead and take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Ankita. That's very important. So again, a warm welcome to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great having you. For everyone's reference, Dr. Ankita Pandey is a political scientist. She received her PhD from the University of Oxford, where she was a Commonwealth scholar. She has taught at LSR and IIT College of Women at University of Delhi. She was also a guest lecturer at the School of Global and Area Studies at University of Oxford. And right now she works as a professor at Open Jindal Global University, which is again a premier institute. But thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today. And we
Thank
are
you.
really looking forward to learn from you today. And other than that, I'm Raghav. That's Raghav and Abhishek, and we are familiar faces. So I wouldn't take much time on that. But very quickly, because we see the numbers growing, we don't want to keep people waiting. I'll set the context very quickly. Today we are talking about political sciences domain and the careers you can actually look for, or that branch out of this really holistic domain. Like Raghav was talking about how the world has changed. I mean, speaking of education to policy to healthcare, political science revolves around everything. The careers are only going to increase moving forward. Without further ado, I'll pass it on to you, Dr. Ankita, for your take, how your journey has been with political science and how you have seen it evolve.
Thank you and welcome everyone. I hope that this is of use for you to as you think about your careers going forward. In the time that I have, I will talk about the range of career options that a degree in political science opens up for you. And alongside mentioning those, I will also mention what kinds of electives, what kinds of optionals you should choose to be better prepared for the particular career path that you choose. And in the end, I have taken the liberty to share some general advice that almost 12, 13 years of my teaching experience at various political science departments, generations of students have said that these are things that if they were told right at the beginning, they would have benefited from. So towards the end, I'll sort of talk about some general advice, which is not necessarily just for political science, but emphasizing the importance of employability skills, which can be used across a range. Now, the crux of a political science degree is to teach you how to read, how to think, and how to write on issues of power play. If I had to really just use one word about what is political science is the study of power. It's the study of how power operates, whether it is national politics, whether it is global issues. It's to understand power, it's to understand political change. And I agree with the previous speakers to say that I actually think in the decade that I have been teaching this subject and have seen various students get placed from in different kinds of sectors, I actually think that political science has become more versatile than before, and is now sort of offering a range of meaningful careers. But before I talk about that, I just want to mention some of the subdisciplines of political science, so that this term you can unpack into what are the sort of rough fields that you will gain knowledge in and develop some expertise on. So typically a degree of political science, whether it is Delhi University, whether it is JNU, whether it is Jamia, whether it is Ashoka or Jindal or whichever university you go to, even South Asian departments internationally, typically these are the 6 7 sort of fields that you will be taught across a 3 year degree. You will be taught political theory, you will be taught Indian politics, you will be taught Western political thought, with whatever nomenclature this is. You'll be taught Western political thought. You will, of course, be taught Indian political thought. You will be taught international relations, and this also includes India's foreign policy, and how India is positioned vis-a-vis the rest of the world. You will be taught public policy and public administration in some form or the other, with, like I said, in some nomenclature or the other. And lastly, you will do what is called comparative politics, which is to really compare, say, the parliamentary system in India with the presidential system in the US, with the constitutional monarchy system in the UK, etc. So you also compare governmental systems, or with China, you also compare governmental systems to get a better sense of how different regions of the world have organized this business of governance. So roughly it is these are the sort of areas in which you will develop expertise in. And I'm sort of listing them at the outset, because these are also the branches that different people pick to move into certain kinds of expertise and then use it for employment. Now, let me start with some of the most traditional pathways, and then I will talk about the newer ones that have opened up more recently. So the most sort of traditional pathways, the ones that most sort of students of political science actually opt for, especially in North India, is of course civil services and the bureaucracy. How does political science help there? Firstly, of course, any civil service aspirant who is intending to serve as a bureaucrat and is going to interact with ministers and interact with public policy specialists must have some kind of a stronghold over issues in Indian politics. That's obviously very, very important. But secondly, and more strategically, most students find it very useful to have studied political science, because Indian polity is a very crucial segment of the UPSC prelims syllabus. So most of them tell me that they are able to prepare both general knowledge and current affairs as well as discipline. And then it also lends very easily to sister disciplines like international relations, etc. Now, if you are somebody who wants to do this, who wants to look into civil services and the bureaucracy, what you should be mindful of while doing your 3 years of political science is that you pick electives or you pay more attention to sections of your course and to electives that are designed around governmental structure, around Indian politics. Pay attention to what kind of, which scholars argue what. Of course, with the civil services, there is a certain emphasis on facts. You should be somebody who has a flair for technical details, remembering names and stuff of this kind. And also, of course, an inclination towards reading the newspapers, staying updated, staying focused, and invest in memorizing to a certain degree. And a sort of a related field, which is lesser known as compared to civil services and the bureaucracy, but is related, is of course also working at embassies and high commissions of, and the NCR region in Delhi is especially sort of advantaged there, because many of these embassies are actually located here. How political science helps, the bits of your degree that invest in international relations and India's foreign policy will really help you with this. And again, if you're somebody who might be looking at this, then take an interest in certain regions, take an interest in East Asia, in Middle East, in South Asia, in Europe, in America. What are the kinds of large patterns of politics that you observe there, and not just individual countries. I have found it more useful for my students to look at regions and not necessarily individual countries. And alongside, I would say that if you are looking for a position in an embassy or a high commission, by position, I mean they have strategic content creators. They have people who will create briefs for various embassy diplomats and officials, who will edit, who will proofread, who will fact check all kinds of print and visual elements of the embassy's public engagement, as well as, like I said, certain strategic content, give advice. Sometimes there are my previous sort of students have, because embassies are interested in, say the embassy of Japan is interested in Indo-Japanese sort of relations, so they will need somebody with a training in international relations or India's foreign policy to sort of keep track of what is happening on that front, irrespective of whether it makes national news in India or not, to sort of focus and draw from a long-term view of what this relationship has been, and then provide briefs to various diplomats accordingly. So there is that kind of a sort of an offshoot of also being in close proximity with the bureaucracy. Then, of course, many of our students have opted for journalism. It our students are, they usually acquire the skill of long-term analysis. For instance, like, one of the skills that you need as a journalist is an event happens and you must sort of know the context. It could be anything. A communal riot happens in an area. But if you know the history of Muzaffarnagar, or even if you know the history of Western UP and riots in the area, you will immediately know what is distinctive about this one. Is this following a pattern? Is this not following a pattern? And things of that kind. Or again, a long sort of long due an understanding of Indian politics, for instance, that, or you have by reading, say, party and party politics in your Indian politics classes, you would know what group votes for which party over time, what we call, what is traditionally the vote bank of a certain political party. And then when you see election results, you get a sense of whether this is in sync with a previous pattern, or has this broken something. And that enables you to report better and even understand quite quickly the significance of an event, as opposed to someone who does not have this training and will look at it, will receive an event and then start doing the research around it. Even Article 370 gets lifted. If you are aware of the history of Kashmir and the Indo-Pakistan conflict around it, you understand the importance of a development. You understand the difference between, say, statehood, trifurcation, etc. You know what these terms mean. So knowing the context and knowing the history of Indian politics will really help you with journalism, with reporting, with analyzing, etc. And again, if you are interested in this field, right from the beginning, I would say start investing in your writing skills, start investing in analyzing, start reading opinion pieces, because that's really, you've seen in your sort of prime time thing, you have different sort of positions on something. So you read opinion pieces, you get a sense of what the different kinds of positions on a particular issue or on a particular matter are. Writing skills, oral skills, very important for a journalist, And the other thing that I would say is quite important for a journalist is the ability to condense, because you must sort of communicate to your audience. They may not have the time to sit and read one long piece about something, but giving all the information in as condensed a way as possible is very useful. And again, that's why I say that writing skill, the ability to condense information and make it reader friendly, is a very important sort of part of print journalism, as well as the teams that actually prepare content for anchors to speak. Then among the traditional fields is my own field, which is the academia. Um, I am personally very fascinated with power play in various spheres. I find it, I'm very curious about it. It really opens up really interesting themes. And the good thing here about political science is that it's not constrained by any one disciplinary method. Let me explain that. Um, when I say that it's not constrained by any one disciplinary method, for instance, historians will go to an archive, they will go to the National Archive, or they will go to their method is to explore previous records. Or if you sociologists or anthropologists, they will conduct surveys, they will conduct interviews, they'll conduct field work, and that's how they get the information that they then begin to process. Statistics, they look at data. um, in that sense, political science is not constrained by any one disciplinary method. So if you're studying any of the themes that I just mentioned, you could combine all of these, or you could go to the archives, you could combine it with fieldwork, you could combine it with interviews, you can generate large data. And I find that to be a very interesting asset in this discipline. It's not constrained in that sense. um, of course, in the academia, it means several degrees. It means you will have to do a master's and then an MPhil and probably a PhD. You have, after your master's, there is something called the NET exam, which you give if you want to teach in colleges at various Indian universities. And alternatively, you secure a PhD and then apply for lecturership, assistant professor, associate professor, jobs. So it's slightly more long term, but I would say that it's sort of is very rewarding in the fact that it keeps your intellect quite stimulated. Um, of late, one of the fields that has become quite popular, in that, say, in the last 5 years or so, a lot of my students have been placed in these fields, is the large field of public policy. Your knowledge, the knowledge that you acquire on governance, on democracy, on empowerment of social groups, um, say even the policy of reservation, how do you actually go about implementing it? How will you, what are the ways in which the creamy layer could be discriminated from the non-creamy layer? How do you distinguish it? What should be the cap? Why should that be the cap on reservation? Which groups should get it? Should it be according to your class position? Should it be according to your caste position? Should it? So, you know, a whole lot of implementation related aspects are covered by public policy. And my students have been to they are in private companies that take public policy specialists to represent their interests in the policy making circles. Then there are organizations like the Center for Policy Research, for example. They have positions like research associate on land rights initiative, or a research associate on accountability initiative. So they you sort of use government policies, but really look at the implementation aspect of it. And here, the kinds of sort of electives that you should then focus on if you are looking to be somebody who wants to study Manrega, somebody who wants to study any government policy for that matter, is take courses on development, pay attention to your courses on public policy, on public administration, and the various debates within it. And the other sort of, again, a traditional field is the development sector, what we roughly call the development sector, which means various kinds of international non-governmental organizations, what we call INGOs, and also UN organizations in India. So you have UN organizations in India like the UN Women. You have ILO, which is the International Labour Organization. You have UNDP, which is the United Nations Development Program. I mentioned these three because I have students who have been placed here. So all of these organizations, so whether it is sort of some of the top international NGOs or it is UN organizations, all of them recruit human rights officers, political affairs officers. Um, a student of mine was a consultant on a position paper for Millennium Development Goals. So the UN has come up with, say, Millennium Development Goals, and the Chhattisgarh government wants to, write a position paper, and so they call an expert from the UN who can help them design or help them write, help them really adapt the Millennium Development Goals, but for Chhattisgarh government, but for the UP government, but for the Himachal government. And then you have students who have degrees in political science that aid this process. That, like I said, there are program officers, political affairs officers. There are gender budgeting positions. There are peace and security consultancies, and all of that in this large development sector kind of a space. Again, they want a master's degree. So usually after your bachelor's, if you identify a field and then get a master's degree, and sometimes they also need some degree of previous experience to join. So to join an NGO and then move up to one of the UN organizations is how most of the students have been able to do so. Now, some of the newer paths, some of the newer career paths that my students have taken recently. One is, one of the things that has started now happening recently in Indian politics is that political campaigns have become professionalized. So you no longer have, so you have like a agency. A good example is IPAC. I don't know if you have heard of the Indian Political Action Committee, but you would have heard of Prashant Kishore, who had recently assisted Trinamool for the Bengal elections, for instance. So, so there are sort of independent groups like the Indian Political Action Committee, and they offer services to various political parties. So this is not joining a political party to run their campaign. Previously, it was members within the political party that would design campaigns and and run electoral campaigns. And now you have a slightly more professionalized version of it. And here there are sort of two kinds of things. So say IPAC, to give an example, they have a cell for political and strategic affairs. They have a political intelligence unit. And these are groups. So these groups alongside these cells, alongside say strategic communications group and cells that will conduct surveys, will all sort of work together, and at least three of the 5-6 cells that they would prefer people who have a degree in political science or public policy. But the surveys bit is not just exclusive to these new organizations. You have around elections, and you all know this, around elections you have various kinds of surveys that get conducted. Some that political parties themselves commission, and some that independent news media organizations commission, and some research centers commission. So you have pre-poll surveys, you know this, there are pre-poll surveys, there are exit poll surveys. There is also constituency-based surveys that individual, say, members of the parliament may commission in order to get a sense of the public mood. And then there are, like I said, there is an organization called the CSDS, which is the Center for Studies of Developing Societies. They had for the longest time with Pronoy Roy and Yogendra Yadav, they would for the longest time have done surveys around who's voting for whom, how traditional vote banks are shifting, and things of that kind. You have newer groups like the Chanakya group, for instance, who also does this work. And so that's another area in which our graduates have gone. And a related sort of a field, which is again about, political parties becoming more professional, is what we call political consultancies. By political consultancies, I mean, the example I can give you is there's an organization called, say, the PRS Legislative Research. PRS Legislative Research is, for instance, a non-profit organization, and they are there to support MPs and MLAs with high quality, credible research on important policy matters, on important legislative matters. So they actually provide various sort of MPs and MLAs who want that with people, with interns, as well as senior mid-level people who will be required to track important developments in a certain sector, prepare analysis on, say, legislation that is pending in the parliament that will help the MP take a position on new sort of legislation that will get discussed. They will write thematic briefs on important policy issues. So that is another sort of a new domain that has opened up. And then, of course, there are non-traditional news media. You have a whole lot of news sort of media now, which is internet based only, and they look for the same kinds of positions that typically print media also looks for. They look for reporters, they look for content creators, they look for editors, and a whole sort of very similar range of people. But there's a whole new domain. I'll not name the ones that I have in mind because it may seem like I have certain favorites, but you all know that there are a whole range of non-traditional news media, both in Hindi and in English, that are doing very well. Independent media houses that are doing very well. And then think tanks is another a group. I have in mind, for instance, the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis, that is IDSA, Observer Research Foundation, the ORF. You have Institute of Economic Growth, which is a research center. Then I already mentioned, say, CSDS. All of these think tanks will have fellowships. They have fellows who they recruit. They also have media managers, and they have people that will track particular issues that are of interest to the organizations. It's very clear, like the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis, for instance, will look at war studies, will look at various kinds of patterns that you find there. The Institute of Economic Growth would be lovely for somebody who has an interest in political science and economics. So an analysis of the budget, but keeping the politics of it in the center and not the economics of it in the center. So that kind of positions are always there. And yeah, to the very end, I would say that there are, for those of you to whom issues of social justice are important, there are, of course, activist and advocacy groups, which play a very, very important role. A very dear sort of ex-student of mine, who's also now a dear friend of mine, is heading a Greenpeace unit, for instance. So you have Amnesty International, you have Oxfam, you have the Hamsafar Trust, you have Greenpeace, you have PETA. All of these organizations look for people who have a political acumen, who have a sort of a long-term understanding of how Indian politics has reacted to certain issues, and then they use that. So in conclusion, what I would like to mention is, as I said towards the beginning, I just wanted to share a couple of things that, irrespective of what all of you decide, I think that there are certain traits that I have found in students who were able to secure a good career. And I'd just like to mention some of them. The first is that it's nice to, it I'm not saying that you have to, but it's good to know what you want to do early on. The earlier you can begin your preparation, the better it is, because and that's not to say that you can't change your mind. By all means, you could start with one thing, realize the shortcomings, and pick another. But doing that, in my experience, has been better than people who have not paid attention to the whole question of careers, or who have left it to the third year to decide what they are going to do. So the earlier the planning begins, even if the plans change, the better it is. It will also, like I said, that if you choose to join political science at Jindal, I would say that it will help you pick certain kinds of electives. It will give you a sense of which classes are really important for you, and which you must follow up on, and which you can afford to know, but your career is not dependent on that path. That's not your path, for instance. So it will also help you complement and pick the right kinds of electives. The other sort of general thing I would say is, by and large, my students who have tried to reach out to people who are already in the positions that they want to be in, that's really helpful. So if you want to do law and you want to be a lawyer, and you have a political science degree, catch hold of one and talk to them about what they're doing. So instead of an abstract kind of a, I want to become this, talk to somebody who already is doing the thing that you want to, and you'll be surprised there is a lot of good advice for somebody who is seeking it. um, also, no matter which career path you pick from the ones that I just listed, your communication skills, your oral skills, your presentation skills, your writing skills, I cannot emphasize this enough. This is really important. Engaging, listening, observing, writing, communicating are sort of important almost across the board now. And that's, like I said, I call them employability skills. And these are the sort of skills that you must sort of invest in if you think that there is a gap in that in your school education or subsequently. That's an area that you should sort of be mindful of. And in many of the fields that I just also mentioned, being able to prove that you have a track record of team working, that you have a track record of taking initiatives are also is also very, very useful. Um, in this day and age with so much sort of information being thrown at us from all sides, I would say knowing how to manage your time, scheduling your workflow, planning well based on the resources that you have. I remember that my in my thesis, because it was this long and big sort of project that I had undertaken, one of the things that my supervisor then said was that do the thesis that you can do. Don't do the thesis that you cannot do. So you see, it's what she meant by that is have in mind what your resources are, what is your personality, what will you actually, what can you see yourself doing day in and day out for a reasonable amount of time. And if you are thinking like that, then you are picking something that you can do. You're not picking something because it is, I don't know, trendy, or because it is something that your friends are picking, or things of that sort. And lastly, I would say, by and large, in almost all the options that I spoke about, rigor is something that is really pays. If you, I would say that the rigor of something is actually more important than its scope. So it's a good idea to not spread yourself too thin. Picking, narrowing, and focusing as much as you can early on will really help you, no matter which of the themes that you pick. And I hope that you find the skills that I am talking about in the degree program that we offer at JSIA. So with that, I'll pause. And
No, absolutely, ma'am. In fact, I was making notes, and I'm sure Raghav was. And literally, if people weren't, they're missing out. Quick points you mentioned about careers. I think 3 words I want to bring across is tech, social media, and sports. How can you remove political science and policy from that? We are living in that kind of a world. And very interestingly, that will bring me to my next question that we have for you. In fact, a couple of people have asked this, and this is really ironical because people have asked, is political science, Dr. Ankita, only for students of humanities? I think they didn't hear me when I was introducing you because I said you are a political scientist. And that is where the irony is as well.
um, I mean, am I right to think that what they mean is that only students who have opted for humanities at the school
that's
level
what they say. Yes, yeah.
Political science? That's no, absolutely not. Please get rid of that thought completely. We don't have every university that I know of that offers political science caters to the lowest sort of denominator, as well as the people who may have had a background in the subject. In fact, I would say if you have to transition to political science, now is a good time. If you did that at your master's level, or you did it at a later level, that would actually be much more difficult. Undergraduate programs are meant for people who, we are not assuming that students have a background in political science. So often when we start our classes, we start with the absolute basics. We, in a class on secularism, we'll start with what is it? How is it different from the English language idea of religious toleration? Or how is it different from the Hindi idea of Sarv Dharm Sambhav? So we really start with some of the absolute basics, and not, you should not worry about this. Most undergraduate programs, I have also served as on the syllabi committees on many other universities. Most undergraduate programs, I assure you, are meant to Don't assume that you have a degree in humanities or arts or social sciences or any of the sort. Not at all.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Ankita. In fact, from what I heard, you talked about so many skills that are needed. The way I look at it, I think this is something Abhishek and I both advocate for this, that the skills are transferable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the underlying foundation of how you can actually, your point, humanities is not essential. It's those skills that matter that you'll be able to transition into a political science field. So thank you for answering that. And with that, I have a next question for you as well. Again, it has come up in the chat. Global affairs is a career domain that's gaining a lot of popularity. It's been trending recently. How different or similar is it from a BA honors in political science, and what are some key differences?
So while political science, let's say that global affairs will keep front and center the idea of geography, the interaction between various countries, the interaction between various regions. Let me give you a very contemporary example of this would be the whole vaccine related uh, global politics around it. Who manufactures? Who actually keeps it? Who gets to decide which are the vaccines that are legitimate and which are the vaccines that are not legitimate? So you pick any issue. I could substitute vaccine with oil. You know, which are the countries that produce it, which are the countries that are actually importing it, and how does it, what sorts of dependencies this creates internationally. That is one of the areas that say global affairs will focus on. Then there are problems today that the world faces that cannot be understood within national boundaries. Terrorism is not a problem that you can understand within national boundaries. It is necessarily, by definition, it's a sort of a global issue. Pollution, climate change is not, by definition, is not something that can be understood properly, or not something that can be understood with rigor if you stay within national boundaries. So like I said, so trade, climate change, terrorism, the question of security, there are so many issues now that, unlike say elections in India, or unlike say Indian constitution, cannot be understood in a narrow geographical sense. And so that really is the focus of global affairs, the idea that we have to see the connections and the interdependencies that are present in the world. Political science, like I just said, is a study of power wherever it plays. So with something as micro as gender-based discrimination, say sexual violence against women, to things like I said, to things like various kinds of international sort of conflicts, or politics that you see in the UN General Assembly. So the political science will give you the resources to really understand how power plays out. So whether it is nationally or it is internationally, once you understand the logic of power, the logic of state sovereignty, the idea of modernity, the meaning of words like democracy or equality or liberty, you can then apply it in various ways. So the real difference is really that of emphasis. What is the sort of central core crux idea?
Perfect. That kind of sums it up very nicely. And with that, I just want to ask, so, talking about the Jindal School of International Affairs, how is the university being able to aid students in political science?
So there are a whole range of things you can, I mean, I hope that many people here will know this. There's a lot of attention to individual counseling and mentorship. Most students who, no, all students who join us are allotted mentors. So for instance, I have a couple of students who I keep in touch with regularly. And so we're not just doing some generic one size fits all advice, but really taking absolutely individualized sort of counseling as far as career is concerned, as far as skills are concerned, as far as the decisions that young adults have to take in their in the journey of their graduation. We also have, and I encourage all of you who have sort of specific questions, we also have a career services that will be happy to address individual questions and also put you in touch with faculty members who will be able to guide you. We have internships, and that's a great way to sort of get a quick preview of what really happens inside an organization, and then helps you whether or not the internship translates into a job in the area. A lot of our students find it very useful to know and get hands-on experience about how something how an organization works. It either gives them the sense that, okay, this is not the job for me, and it really helps them eliminate from some of their shortlists, and some others like it and want more of it. It gives them an opportunity, like I just said, to speak to people who are already doing certain kinds of jobs that they aspire, that these students aspire to do. So I'd say we take very good care of our students.
In fact, I want to compliment that point, Dr. Ankita. I have 3 students studying in your department right now, and I worked with them for a couple of years. And when you were speaking about departments, right, I would give an example. One of my students pursuing IR at Jindal, her elective was environment studies. I don't remember the exact module. I think you'll know better. But she was very excited about this domain. Down the line, she wants to go and work with, like you said, UNDP is one of the core areas she wants to explore. Now, a university is giving me that exposure in particular, which leads to my next question. You spoke about them speaking to different kinds of people. What are the kind of industry tie-ups you have, be it with academia or with industry, that gives them that practical exposure that also gives them an edge?
Yeah, I actually, so I'll refer you to what I just said. We have various kinds of, we have groups that visit us, that that constantly hold talks and workshops and seminars with our students. There is a, like I said, there's a career services, there's a placement process that works. There is also, again, to mention internships that give students an exposure to various kinds of organizations, and a whole lot of time, and these I don't want to mention particular organizations because that changes from year to year, but in almost every year our students get a very good sense of, we have students that have gone and done market research for various sort of industry houses. And so, yeah, so there is, I would say, there is enough exposure that every batch gets to some of these opportunities.
Very interesting. I think somebody had written about pol science and economics. I am not too sure if you've read the news today. Dr. Geeta Gopinathan, the IMF chief economist, got awarded. And please go and see her academic background. That answers the question, I think. One question, ma'am, I think you have already answered a lot of them. My particular last question, particularly from my side, would be that what advice you would have for them who are starting now, maybe students in grade 9 and 10, how can they start working towards the domain? What are the few things? You've given them the skills, but how do they get exposure to the industry if they are starting young?
You mean students who are currently
in class 9, 10th, getting to know about the domain?
Right. So I would say that the best thing to do is to keep yourself updated, to follow various university career placement cells on social media, to get a sense of, of course, our alumni is a very good resource base to tap into, to get in touch with people who have previous experience in the who have done these degrees previously, and I would also say just learn to be interested in, I know that some students really benefited from just doing job searches in various kinds of in, say, the organizations that I mentioned. So you get a sense of what in some cases you get a sense of what the salaries are, You get a sense of what the work is. You look at the eligibility criteria. You have a sense of, okay, these are the 5 things that they want, and therefore in my career these are the skills that I need to acquire, and these are the degrees that I will need to acquire. And overall, I would say just have develop a sense of curiosity about politics and stay sort of updated, get a sense of what is happening, read various kinds of opinion pieces, and that helps in sort of creating opportunities to pursue.
Great. Thank you so much, ma'am. And what we're going to do is we're going to quickly take a few questions, what we have received in the chat, some really quick answers there. One is political science. You mentioned, yes, we can look at global affairs, which basically puts things into a global perspective, but we can also look at national issues, right? Would you recommend that one should, let's say if I'm an Indian, should I pursue my political science from India, or can I actually, let's say, go into XYZ country for my undergrad or postgrad, or like yourself, let's say for my doctoral degrees, right? Is it good to pursue it from another country when we are natives of another country for that matter? Does that actually help, or is it not that much valuable?
I would say that I really want to say either. It doesn't really, there's not, in my experience, and now I've sort of been to the most prestigious Western university, you have courses on, so you could do a master's in development studies, you could do a master's in or a bachelor in what we call PPE, which is politics, philosophy and economics. That's their equivalent of a BA, like a BA program here. You could pick a master's in gender studies. I would say that in terms of rigor, there isn't really a lot of difference in what you get exposed to. You have a fantastic faculty here as well as there. In fact, there are also students who go and do South Asian studies, who do, so I know that Oxford offers, for instance, a master's in Indian politics or a master's in South Asian politics. So I would not, and I also don't think that being the national of any one country makes a difference. When I was teaching at Oxford, there were students from Mexico, there were students from Argentina, there was British students, there were British Bangladeshi, British Indian, British Pakistani students who have never lived in the subcontinent but have Indian roots. And they would also study Indian politics. They were very fascinated by politics on the subcontinent. I would think that the decision of whether you do your degrees here or in a Western university should really not be based on what your nationality is, but be based on what your long-term plan is. Where are you planning to go? How are you planning to use that degree? And of course, you have to factor in your resources. You have to factor in, there are students who will require scholarships. There are students who have sort of personal circumstances. There are students who must go because their family is shifting or things of that sort. So it's a combination of where you want to take your career, as well as like I said, your personal circumstances. That said, there are a couple of courses that you may find, and this is particularly keeping in mind the courses that are dependent more on technology. So there are some courses on artificial intelligence that you may find in a Western university and has not been offered yet. And please take this advice with a pinch of salt, because that's just my personal experience. I do think that getting a broad sense of the discipline and only then sort of narrowing at the master's level is a better idea than to narrow right away with, say, artificial intelligence, and realize later that that's not something that you are particularly keen on. So yeah, it's a combination of various things, but definitely not. There definitely is not a difference of rigor as far as South Asian studies is concerned, and your nationality is absolutely irrelevant to pursuing it. We have Western students, white students who study Indian politics, and vice versa.
Absolutely. Abhishek, please go on.
No, absolutely. In fact, ma'am, thank you so much for answering that question as well. I just wanted to quickly say college politics is not what we're talking about here. It's academia. and what we're looking at. So just to make it clear, somebody got it wrong. And that is the, I think, ma'am, quickly to wrap it up, you've summed it up really well in terms of opportunity. So it starts, one thing I want to quickly add is, and ma'am can add to that, it's about the why, what, and how, irrespective of the career. Why you're getting into the field, like ma'am said, start early. That gets you on a path to, I wouldn't say just to get successful, but also to prepare. I mean, in case of a pandemic here, God forbid, I mean, you can be prepared well. Know that what you've done towards the domain, what you want to do with it, and how it's going to progress in your life. Because every university is going to ask you that, every recruiter is going to ask you these questions. So earlier you define and ask yourself, the better for you. But on a closing note, I want to say just for everyone, I posted the email IDs, you can reach out to us. If ma'am is comfortable, she can share her ID as well. You can write to her. That's completely. Otherwise, ma'am, is there any possible way to communicate with you, LinkedIn or email?
I have, you have my official ID and you could sort of use that, my Jindal ID.
Perfect, ma'am. We'll put it in the chat box, and you can write an email to us. We'll share ma'am's ID with you. But we truly appreciated, ma'am, having you here. We got to learn personally, what I can say, and I'm sure everybody did here. Any closing thoughts, ma'am, you want to leave students with?
I would just like to say that I have been very. I think probably I did my undergraduate degree. I joined in the year 2000. And I have an abiding romance with political science. I continue to be very fascinated with it, and still things happen that make me wonder about things that I have learned and trying to understand them. So I just want to say that it's a fascinating discipline, and if you choose it, I hope that your journey with it will also be as rewarding and as sort of intellectually stimulating as mine has been. And it's also lovely, that sort of power, because it infuses all aspects of our life, your interpersonal relationships, your relationship at workplace. Conflict is sort of a part of every space, public, family, public sphere, workplace, market, etc. And so to see it play as somebody who has a training in it, who can sort of identify patterns, it really gives you a lens to understand the world. And I hope that I have managed to enthuse some people to give this discipline a shot.
No, absolutely, you have, ma'am. In fact, you speak with so much passion about the discipline that actually reflects that if you are really keen about a domain, it will show. So thank you for that. And also, Chaitanya, a certificate will be delivered to your house. We don't have the address, but that's okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. And take care, everyone. And please make sure you're writing to us. Krupa has posted the ID as well. So don't forget to write to us at hello@minor.com for any queries. And take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.